Welcome back to Incremental, the Continuous Improvement Podcast. This is our practice edition where we go over improvements we made throughout the week and tie them back to lean principles. My name is Uriel Eisen from Austere Manufacturing.
And I'm Devin Bedoni from Lichen Precision.
And got a quote.
The brain of man is programmed to quickly remove doubt by reaching some decision. Charlie Munger on doubt avoidance in Same as Ever by Morgan Housel. Housel.
Yep.
Yeah. Sort of tying back into last episode's topic of that we want to jump to conclusions quickly without actually going and seeing.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting point because I hadn't really thought about maybe why do we want to jump to conclusions, and it's very fundamentally on a evolution, from an evolution perspective, quite useful. And so it is an uphill battle to go against millions of years of evolution,
right, in
how you're thinking. And I think Kahneman covers a lot of this in Thinking Fast and Slow.
I have not read that.
I've read, I forget if I finished it or part of it. It's basically the way we think is very useful and also very flawed. But the way it's useful is not in every way, and so it's useful. It's good to differentiate when that is a good way of thinking and when other ways of thinking are much better in terms of results. But we're it's physically sometimes we're very hardwired to do it a particular way.
Yeah, I've always found it interesting to the research on and we've talked about this I think briefly on the podcast, how much our emotions play into our ability to make decisions in ways that we don't really account for or aren't really aware of. There's that classic example of a guy who had a brain injury and effectively stopped having the ability to experience emotions. And
and wasn't there
I think it was
Radiolab?
I think it was on a Radiolab.
Yeah. And they compared it to Spock of perfect decision making.
Well,
but then he couldn't make any decisions.
He couldn't make any decisions.
Yeah.
He would analyze and analyze and analyze, and many things we have discovered, right? You can't just analyze and come to some conclusion. Right. You have to go and see and have an experience. And
the example they gave was picking what pen to use to write something down.
And I think picking out cereal.
Figure it out because he didn't have an emotional, that's my favorite pen, I'll use that one.
And
which one would be better?
Yeah, I think the example I remember is being in a grocery store trying to pick out which cereal. And it just became this soup of comparing nutrition facts and
and price and
I think it was kind of sad. I think his life kind of fell apart because he sort of ceased to be able to function. And
so your point here is that Spock is not realistic.
Spock is not realistic.
No, but
that tying into this, I think this we're programmed to quickly remove doubt by reaching some decision. I think our emotions play a big role in our our capability and inclination to come to a conclusion quickly.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's very interesting thinking about how to problem solve better, that this is the sort of 80% planning, 20% action. I think the way that sounds is not really the way I think our definition of what counts as planning versus action are just sort of different, but also completely missing the part of why would you try to do anything if you don't understand the problem? And most of us don't understand any problem we're actually busily trying to solve. Instead, we're just oh, well, let me do something else that I think will be a good next step. Because, it feels uncomfortable to just have, a lot of doubt.
It's supremely uncomfortable.
But it's worth, you're sort of, I think it's worth making that explicit of okay, let's just be cognizant of that in solving problems.
I think also following the 5 whys thing, not the traditional 5 whys, but the recent
Oh, the five questions.
The five questions.
Yeah.
that allows you to sort of like get back to a place of some comfort so that you so you can like work on one thing at once instead of being completely overwhelmed by an array of unknowns.
It's sort of, you are recognizing that you don't understand, but instead of just going like, I don't know, and so I'll do nothing, it's saying, okay, what very small thing can you do today to disassemble some of that larger unknowing?
Yeah.
Instead of, I think the mistake everyone makes often, is kind of is losing the awareness that we actually don't know and that we're still testing a hypothesis.
Yeah.
But we now have removed doubt about what we'll do next in our PDCA loop, but we have not removed doubt about whether that's an effective method, right?
Yeah.
And that's a good distinction to make.
Yeah. And I think it can just like get you to a place of, get you out of the emotional overwhelm so you can actually like focus on a problem.
Yeah.
Instead
Stay
of
tuned. We'll find. We'll see. This week has been quite overwhelming.
A little whack-a-mole.
Something, yeah.
Well, on that note,
talk about some improvements.
Jump into some stuff we did.
Yeah. I had a very exciting one.
Yeah.
It's not exact. Well, it is an improvement. I needed speaking of go and see, I'll take you guys on the whole journey here.
Yeah.
I jumped right to solving problems, right to the solutions. I sent you a picture last week of a way of stacking stock in the CNC to get more parts. The belt is bigger blocks, so I didn't want short run times on our automation, and so I was like, okay, perfect time to tackle stacking blocks.
Yeah.
And then I was scheming about how to stack them, keep them from sticking together with coolant, or I could do like a Pez dispenser, or on and on.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, I wonder what runtime I would get if I just put them in and just made the tray as big as possible.
Yeah.
So then I went and measured the machine, and there's a lot of space in there if you just max it out.
Uh-huh.
And so I have a 3-hour runtime. Now, part of that is because my cycle time is not it's not a super optimized part yet.
Yeah.
But the point being, I did it exactly the same in terms of just using normal trays stacked one deep.
Just rinse and repeat,
more or less.
Yeah.
So once I went and saw at the CNC, I just like jogged it to all of its max travels in different directions, and I was like, that's a lot of space. And then I laid it out on the computer to figure out how many parts I could actually fit.
Uh-huh.
And then in making the trays, I was out of the shunk. I bought a bunch of shunk stuff on eBay, 0-point systems, and they came with pallets.
Uh-huh.
I've used all those pallets for the different parts. So then I was like, okay, I guess I'll machine some new pallets. That's going to be time consuming. I'm not really set up to do big plate work. I guess I can just hold it in the vise.
Uh-huh.
It was just like...
one of those things.
And so I decided I would just make them out of PVC trim.
Uh-huh.
And in doing that, so then so the shunk pallets are like $1,000 each. So I was like, okay, not gonna do that. Then I found a guy on eBay.
Wow.
But I was kind of also like, okay, but the belt is selling very well, and so $1,000, maybe I should just like eat that cost and keep moving, right? Like just get this shipped. Found a guy on eBay who makes essentially the same thing for like $250.
Uh-huh.
Maybe they're not to the same precision, but fine. Anyway, so I ended up making them out of PVC trim from Home Depot, which is 7 1/4 inches by near 3/4 of an inch by 12 feet for $50. So in terms of materials, and the PVC holds up very well in the coolant.
Okay.
And it's easily machined, and you can put screws in it. It's kind of a very nice product.
Interesting.
Also, if you crash the CNC into it, it breaks, which is really nice also.
Don't ask how you know.
Yeah. So I did that, and then I had some extra pull studs that are compatible. So I used those on the first set, the pull studs that go into the 0-point system. So I used those. And then I had previously 3D printed some pull studs to cover. They sell these for like $250. So like when you pull
just
a pallet
to plug
out,
the hole.
so you plug the hole. So I had 3D printed some previously to do that, and it works flawlessly. So then I was like, I wonder if I could just 3D print the pull studs. And the other issue that I was trying to solve is that the threads don't. The threading into the PVC doesn't hold very well, and so like one set of threads stripped. So I like super glued that one in, which is how it's running now. So it does work, but I don't think it'll be a long-term play.
Yeah.
And so then I was thinking like threaded insert. I could machine something and screw it off. But then I just modeled a big flange on the pull stud with a screw pattern in it. 3D printed that, and then my bores. I just like op one of making these pallets was just
make that hole.
Make a big it's like a 75 millimeter diameter shallow bore.
Yeah.
Screwed some of those in. So it's like, and the pull studs are like $100
from Shunk. So
this instead is like $5 from Bamboo. No, this is like $1,200 from Bamboo.
Yeah.
And you amortize that over a bunch of projects. So that was and it's running and it works great, and
that's amazing. I mean, obviously this wouldn't probably work in cutting conditions, but also you never know.
Yeah, it might. I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, maybe once
choose it.
Not repeatedly.
So anyway, so that was a big win. It was cheap. It was fast. I think we're gonna do it. Oh, and not the biggest part. Another additional factor that I hadn't considered: these pallets, which are way bigger, are super light. Super light. So for the operator, it's really a lot nicer.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're not like bending over with a heavy pallet. You're bending over with a light pallet.
Huh. Is this completely altering what machine you're going to get next then?
No. But it did make me think harder. Like, it's making me lean toward the bigger machine because of how easy it is to get long run times with a big table.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that would immediately be useful to me and immediately increase capacity by more than just the additional travels, because it's like most people's CNCs only run like 20% of the time, right? Like 2/3 is at night, and then you have weekends.
Yeah.
So I could get a lot more runtime just by running more hours into the night. So it's a lot more like 2 machines or 3 machines.
Yeah. Although I have to say, having listened to you just explain that, definitely just completely rinsing and repeating the whole setup.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of appealing.
Oh, yeah. This feels like an R machine instead of the S machines feels like a rinse and repeat, except for solving some problems that I have with the S machines. Like rocketing your table around all the time with your stock balanced on it is like you're solving kind of silly problems.
Yeah.
And then also like showering them in coolant and chips.
Yeah.
And then trying to keep them from sticking in the trays. Ask me how I know. Like, I don't know. So it feels a lot like rinse and repeat in that it's a brother machine. I know the control.
Yeah.
I'm sure getting it to pallet change isn't a big technical hurdle.
And so the 650 wasn't a big compromise in runtime compared to what you can do on the 1000, the S1000?
Oh, that's a good question. My current S1000 setup is maximizing the space I already have on the table. I could make a lot more space if I optimized for a big tray.
Oh.
Like I didn't even remove the vise from the table.
Oh.
So now, actually in saying that, if I just bumped it up a few inches, I could just cover the vise. I could leave it on the table and cover it.
Yeah.
And actually, I constrained this one to still fit on the sheet pan racks. So it's only 13 inches wide.
Oh.
And I could go bigger.
Yeah.
But it's a 3-hour runtime, and it's immediately, it's great. Big win. Oh, and for $50, I can make a bigger one.
Right.
So,
Curious.
The other nice thing about that PVC foam for this type of thing is you can machine it. It's basically, I maxed out the feed rates on the machine. Like I entered a number and the machine was like, no. Like, wait, what? Is this the limit? Yeah, it just machines well.
Interesting. Well, I'll be curious to hear how that conversation evolves.
Yeah. Huh.
But as discussed, run times are not the only important thing.
Not the only important thing, but at some point they become important.
Yeah. Huh. Well, on our big tool management switch up.
Yeah.
Well, so like a month ago, I think, I designed a new tool tag because our other ones were breaking.
Right.
They were taking a silly amount of time to print.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just about to start printing more because we're going to have to renumber all of our holders. I was like, this is going to take kind of forever. So I just designed a new one that uses less plastic.
Nice.
And cut the print time almost in half.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It still takes a while on the Prusa.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. Did you ever open up that file?
No.
I'm curious to see how much faster it would be on a Bamboo.
You said you didn't want to know.
Yeah, I sort of don't want to know because I can't buy one right now. But yeah, and so we've been printing those all week. We had a funny thing. So like our new shop space has like one of those big propane heaters, but there's no propane tank. And I didn't really want to set up for propane because it's not what I wanted to do in the long run. I want to have a heat pump so we can have air conditioning in the summer.
Right.
Anyway, so we've been without heat, and it's been cold, which has not been the most enjoyable. But I came in the other morning and the Prusa had this weird error, and it wouldn't.
Yes,
work.
I've had this error. I have
Yeah.
a funny story about
The
it.
min temp error.
Yep.
So I did a little bit of reading on Google, and I was like, oh, it's like if it's below a certain temperature, it won't trust its own temp gauges.
Right. Which you see the logic there, but it's pretty annoying.
Yeah, so there is a heater in the bathroom. So we've been running the 3D printer in the bathroom.
That's very funny.
And it's very nice to be in there.
Yeah, so
anyway.
my funny story about that is the way I would get it running in the morning is I'd put a heat lamp on it.
Uh-huh.
And then once it gets to, it's not even that warm.
Yeah, it's like 60 or
50?
they say it's 60, but it seems like it works below that.
It does.
Yeah.
The thing is 3D printed out of PETG.
The
One time I walked away.
the heat lamp is?
No, the 3D printer. One time I walked away and forgot about it. And I came back and the print head was quite soft. But yeah, when it cooled off, it
was
still
all right.
worked. Yeah. It's kind of
Whoops.
Yep.
So anyway, that was that one. Are you? Should I do some more? Are you slicing that model while we talk?
I'm slicing and dicing. Yeah.
Okay.
Hit us with another.
So
Wait, what infill do you want? Or we can just do standard PLA.
we do pretty low. I think like 20% or something
Okay.
right now, but it's also mostly solid. So
How long does it take on the Prusa?
28 minutes.
Okay, so this is 19 minutes and 28 seconds,
Okay.
but that's for one.
Yeah.
And the Bamboo does a lot of thinking before it will print anything for you.
Interesting.
So the actual model printing time is 12 minutes and 35 seconds.
Oh, interesting.
And then it's doing like bed leveling and flow calibration and all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we do 6 at a time right now, and they are 2 hours and 45 minutes or something like that.
6 at a time?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what that is. This is riveting content.
Fully in the weeds.
All right. We have a total time of 1 hour and 14 minutes.
Dang. So, yeah, less than half.
Yeah.
It's appealing.
Yeah.
We have a scheme for another thing that might need to be 3D printed, and I think that might push us over the edge because we have to make a few hundred of these things if
interesting.
if we do it.
What is it? Or you don't want to?
No, I can talk about it. It's part of one of our other ones. So it's been interesting. The conversations about tool management have brought up a lot of discussions with other friends, and most notably Avi, our good friend Avi.
Yeah.
And it's like these are all very like fundamental issues of storage and like data management.
Right.
No matter what.
Right.
Whether it's
it could be a tool, it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how like they carry over from the physical to the data. Like the data world very closely reflects the physical world.
Right, because the thing you're having trouble with has nothing to do with it being a physical object. Right? You could find it on a screen or you could find it on a shelf.
Yeah,
but finding it is the hard part.
Well, yeah,
right?
and some of the things do. Like if you're like, okay, I'm going to define. So like a lot of the discussion this last week was how much. Oh, actually, we're having this route also with like job naming conventions. How much information are you trying to embed in your number or your system of your naming convention, whatever that ends up being, a number or combination of letters and numbers or whatever. And the more you constrain that, the more your management system becomes constrained as well. Where was I going with this? Oh, so like if you're like, okay, so this range of numbers is going to represent a thing.
Right.
Now you have just constrained that to a certain limit, right? If you're like, okay, the two digits are going to equate to this level of things, all of a sudden you're limited to 99 units.
Problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, that carries over into the physical space. So we're talking about making a new tool rack that's easier to find your tools.
Okay.
And initially we were like, okay, we're going to dedicate each shelf to a range of numbers, say 200 to 250.
Right.
But obviously, if you start to look at our tool library, our tools are not evenly distributed through all these different numbers.
I see the problem.
And we're not planning to dedicate specific like pockets to specific holders, because all of a sudden then you end up, most of the time the tools are in the machine. So you have an empty space and you end up with this massive tool rack that's mostly empty for the potential of how many tools could be put in it.
This is a very classic warehousing problem.
Yeah. Anyway, the scheme we came up with was to have sliding tool holder pockets on a wall, basically. So that we can define ranges, but they don't have to be fixed. So I think the idea right now is we'll also have sliding like indicators that say like
when you walk out of the elevator on a hotel and there's an arrow that's like these numbers that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that can get moved if a certain area gets full. And then the other thing is we're going to organize roughly by, like whatever, small numbers to the left, big numbers to the right.
Gotcha.
But if it fills up, you need to be able to move the stuff over.
Right.
If you
That's a cool idea.
Come in with a 206 and there's no space between 205 and 207, you need to slide them all over. And if that's literally taking everyone out of a pocket and it starts to become a hassle, and then people break the system.
Yep.
So anyway, where was I going with that? We prototyped it.
Oh, cool.
Instead of building it from scratch, which was good.
Nice.
Because there was going to be
What's the difference of
problems.
prototyping versus from scratch?
Sorry, instead of building it all.
Oh, like this is what we're going to do. You just built one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did not personally. Also, almost none of this was my idea, which was cool.
That is cool.
Aiden came up with the sliding rack concept.
Okay.
Coram has a lot of woodworking background, and so he brought the idea of a French cleat system to the table. And then
So I should say wee.
Wee.
Yeah.
And Coram prototyped it out of some plastic and angle that we had around. And discovered some issues. So
perfect.
It was good. Good that we did one.
It's a win.
We haven't made any more.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think right now we have around 150 tool holders in the shop.
Okay.
And
wow.
We still haven't done our like audit of what we have compared to our theoretical needs.
You're going and seeing.
Yeah. But I'm guessing we're probably gonna need to buy close to another 30 to 50.
Okay.
So we're kind of designing the system to hold 200 plus. And then if we end up needing more than that, we'll just build a second one, I think.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so that's a lot of little pockets to make.
So going back to my previous improvement.
Yes.
You could look at making it out of PVC trim in a CNC, because the cycle time would probably be like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
It's
unbelievably fast.
Like you basically have to get the machine to move through the air in that shape and you'll end up with the part. I mean, it's pretty close to that.
Yeah.
It's very fast.
Interesting. Yeah, we were discussing wood, but we didn't want to deal with wood in the coolant.
Right.
And then we were planning to just machine them out of angle, but it would aluminum angle. But it would still be a project. So we were discussing maybe 3D printing the pockets, and then just the cleat system is easy to just rip on a table saw and punch some holes in and stuff. But anyway, we're getting deep into the actual solutions, but this is all being driven by this kind of rethinking of our tool management in order to make finding tools fast and reliable.
So the target condition is something about retrieval and putting away.
Yeah, retrieval. Basically.
But then also related to reconfiguring.
Yeah.
Without a lot of friction.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool that you recognize that that's a key part of the system. Because I feel like it's easy to just be like, all right, we need to store more tools.
Right.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Like the fundamental target condition, I think, is driving towards our 20-minute changeover goal. But we have so much
and then this
work.
is a key part of that is you're realizing tool.
Yeah.
Knowing what you have and exactly where it is a big part of that puzzle.
Right. There's still a lot of I need a 207. Is this a 207?
What is a 207?
Whatever, the tool ID.
Okay. Oh, gotcha.
I think there's one in that machine. Can I steal it from that machine? Let me check the tool list for this next job. Sure. You can steal that one. Or there's a lot of this says it's supposed to be in a shrink fit holder. There's no shrink fit holders available. Can I steal it from this holder? Or
can I use
or also the newest problem that was less of an issue before because we were all quote unquote experts, was just okay, this is a 207. Which tool in that drawer is supposed to go in here? In this holder? And which holder is this supposed to be?
Yeah.
So anyway, trying to remove all that ambiguity and make it so that once you're given the information that says here is a 207,
right,
you have everything you need to retrieve or build that tool as quickly as possible.
Yeah, like a pit crew. Exactly. You want to be like a pit crew on your CNC.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, I can relate. We're trying to achieve a similar thing with our Kanbans generally, where if you have a Kanban, back to our question of receiving packages, it occurred to me that right now I'm sort of the only one who can put away. Because a lot of the supplies we're ordering are rarely used kind of stuff. Not a lot of them, but enough that.
Yeah.
Anyway. And there's nothing on the card that says put it here, Yeah.
Yeah, I realize that the tool tags are basically Kanban cards, and if you adhere by the rules of Kanban that no tool should travel without a Kanban,
right,
then you're pretty much on the right track.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
What isn't Kanban? All right. Let's see. Yeah, so did that one. Yeah, this is kind of a silly one and a little embarrassing, but real. I have been putting my phone far away from me while working.
Yeah.
And I still I have Bluetooth headphones, so I still hear if a call is coming in.
Mm-hmm.
It is annoying not knowing who's calling, I will say.
Right.
But
it's kind of spicy though. It's like the old days. You're like, hello?
Totally. Yeah. So that has been really very, very useful in just the quality of work. Not in terms of the output, but in terms of just my head is in way less distracted. Yeah, so that's been really helpful.
Yeah. Nice.
And I mean, all the research is basically the distractions, how many you have per hour, your brain normalizes to that. And so it's no longer actually interesting and you keep wanting a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which
it's
I've
not good.
Definitely have anecdotal
evidence.
Anecdotally experienced. Anyway. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's a huge improvement that cost me nothing.
Cool.
For anyone listening.
Yeah. I've done that a few times just due to a shortage of chargers in the shop.
Oh yeah.
And it was very helpful.
Yeah, and you're like, oh wow, I'm just focused on this thing.
Yeah, but somehow it's hard to maintain just doing that, which is weird.
Yeah, I think similarly it's hard to stop doing coke, Similar mechanism in your brain.
It's true. Yeah, maybe I should just think about it like that. It'd be a little more motivating.
Yeah.
But this feels pretty fun.
It does. Gives you a little dopamine
hit. So we brought up our new CAM tool library numbering scheme last week as a proposal. Mm-hmm. Discussed it with the crew and everyone was pretty gung-ho. So we implemented it.
Sorry, CAM numbering.
Sorry, tool numbering system.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So what that ended up looking like, just to get into the weeds for funsies, can't remember if I talked about this part, was we basically gave a two-digit number to each tool holder that we currently use. There's a lot of spare digits there, but we kind of like loosely assigned a range. And then we took our current ID numbers and added a leading 0 to any like side cutting end mill or whatever tool, and added a leading 1 to any plunging tool. So like drills, taps, reamers, etc. So we kind of like freed up a lot of potential space, and it was a simple, clear designation of like,
does it plunge?
Yeah. What type of tool is this going to be? And then basically just renamed it all with that new scheme. Pretty quickly realized that like there needed to be a dash in there, or it was going to be impossible to read. And we're sticking with our SNS designation for
standard,
now.
Non-standard?
Yeah, for whether something should remain built up or not in a holder, as in like always available without having to put it together, versus expectation is that you probably have to put this together.
Gotcha.
One thing that I did come across pretty quick as I was doing it was we have a bunch of different holders, but it became clear that in order to not need to break the system often, there needed to sort of be a generic option, because
generic as in like do whatever you want, like dealer's choice
kind of. Yeah, where like we have like 3 different styles of ER32 collet holders.
I see what you're saying.
And so initially I was just like kind of picking one, and then I was like, well, this is pretty quickly going to result in a potential situation where an operator is going to say, okay, well, this calls for this holder. We don't actually have one of those that specific holder right now, so I'm going to have to go break down another tool or break the system and make some judgment call myself.
Right.
So what we kind of decided on was we have a generic ER16 and a generic ER32 that is our worst case scenario holder in terms of like clearance.
CAM simulation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's like, it's that for a lot of stuff. And it's like, if it says this, you can pick another one that's also an ER32, and it's like, it's going to be fine.
That is very clever / insightful. I feel like there's a tendency to make rules even though you don't want, like no one's going to follow them, but it's like, oh, we'll make a rule, right? Like, let's standardize this.
Yeah.
But then recognizing that if you don't follow that rule, like that sucks because now your system is broken.
Yeah.
So it sort of seems like a cop-out to say like, well, let's account for that. But it's actually a very smart cop-out. Because like there's no reason to not allow the operator to.
Yeah.
Like, yes, maybe long-term you're going to start specifying it for some reason.
Maybe.
But maybe not.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it doesn't take away the option, especially as if you're programming a specific part and you're like, it really does matter now, you can change the ID number.
No,
it becomes a new tool.
Right.
And yeah, it allows a lot of freedom to not break the system.
So how do you track all of these tools? Like, do you just, I would imagine you'd end up with a list that's like 10,000 items long.
It's not that big. No.
Like all the tools times all of the holders.
It's not all the tools times all the holders. Each one has specific right now. So like, for example, a 19-0207S.
Yeah.
That's a specific tool that lives in a holder on the shelf.
Right.
And there's not a variant.
Okay. Okay. So it's not become any sort of problem.
Not as of yet.
Cool.
Yeah. There's like significant sort of
so like
pressure to not build it it takes a little bit of effort to like go through the process of creating a new one.
I see. So you're not okay, got it. I misunderstood. So if you do want to specify everything about it, does that get a new number, or that might just be a one-off for a particular job?
Let's see. Every tool that's in there is fully specified.
Yeah.
But there's not like every 1/4-inch drill doesn't have a variant with each holder pre-specified.
Okay, so what would happen if you wanted one in a different holder? Would you create that, or would you just...
Yeah, I think so. Or if it was a non-standard, maybe just edit it in that particular instance. So it's like that would fall under the like yellow tag system.
I see.
Which is like you got to read this regardless, and you're building it up from scratch regardless.
I see.
So it kind of doesn't...
Interesting.
Hopefully.
That's very cool.
But still very much in process of figuring this all out.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about like system optimization and flexibility.
Yeah.
And it's such a tough thing.
It is. I think I'm like
I really like what you did with the tool tags, I think.
Which part?
So, well, generally, but like the tool numbering, just saying like, wait a second, it doesn't actually matter. Like, let's just give it a code, and that gives us infinite adjustability. I mean, not infinite actually, but
right.
It gives you a lot of adjustability. It's like you were talking about with your shelf, your tool storage shelf. Like the second you create a rigid system, it's difficult then to break it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm really grappling with that around the automation stuff. Like having put 2 new parts on the gripper, I am frankly amazed that you've run the number of parts you have on. Because like as a job, I was thinking about it like in terms of like a job shop. I'd be like, oh God, I need to program another part on it. Granted, these were non-standard parts, but still. So like a standardized system, it's very tempting. I don't know. It's daunting to come up with.
Yeah, a lot of the conversations
systems that are flexible but standard.
I'm very much, I think, knee-jerk erroring towards the flexibility side. Yeah. And the not over-constrained side. Yeah. Had a lot of conversations this last week about kind of like how much information it makes sense to embed in that, because there are very real benefits to having...
Like at a glance, you have a sense of what it is.
Yeah, like this number is gobbledygook if you don't have a reference. So there is a strong argument for having each one of those digits like recognize something that's human readable and not have to go to a reference sheet to build up this thing. But also that system breaks quickly.
Is this in Airtable? How are you storing the...
Right now it's just in CAM.
Okay.
We're editing our posts so all the critical information comes out in the tool, like the header. So it's there accessible. And then the long-term, medium-term, I'd like to say short-term, but that's not realistic. Yeah. The medium-term thought is apparently Fusion has a decent API. Okay. And so I think we're going to be able to link Airtable to the Fusion library and have it stay updated so it's more accessible.
Very cool.
And that will be pretty helpful in hopefully making it so that we're printing all of our tags instead of handwriting them. Yes. And also printing tool storage, all that stuff. Yeah. Because the prospect of doing this re-update it's not a lot. It's not a small amount of work.
No, that does sound daunting.
Yeah.
Nice. I built a new assembly table.
La la.
I'm all in on MakerPipe.
Yeah.
We got a pipe cutter for it, like just a plumbing pipe cutter. Yeah. Makes all the difference.
Nice.
It's just so much faster now that like building new stuff is
really... What? Oh, just like the spinny style?
Yep. Before that we were bandsawing them and then deburring them, and it was a real hassle. Yeah. It's amazing as you drive down the friction of doing things, just what a change that creates in your behavior.
Are you using steel or aluminum EMT?
Steel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been really, really nice. I made Kanbans for the different joints.
Oh, cool.
In MakerPipe. So we're just going to have a lot of it available, and the goal is to build a lot of stuff and just forget about the price and just do it. Yeah. So we can start experimenting more. Cool. So built a new assembly table. I was realizing that with the belt hitting production, it was all sort of scattered around like what we our existing setup. Like I was like, this is verging on chaos. Like you talked about last episode, the mental model of like a hoarder's house.
Uh-huh.
It was really, you know, those times when you're like, okay, I am cutting corners. Like when you're working on a really dirty or like messy workbench.
Yeah.
And at some point you should really stop and clean it up
Yeah.
because otherwise you're going to like knock your drill to the floor, break your drill. So it was one of those. Parts were all over the place. And I just realized like to actually launch this successfully and at a high, production rate and making sure our quality doesn't slip, we just needed a designated spot. So I built a new table, probably took about, 30, 40 minutes.
Oh, that's pretty fast.
Yeah, it was very quick. And it was the size we wanted. And
what are you using for the top?
just plywood.
Yeah.
From, I have a ton of cabinet doors from a house someone renovated and it's pre-painted. It's just funny because they don't always fit exactly, but it's like, that'll work.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one thing I was like, what are you keeping on hand for actual tabletop?
Not enough. We just ran out today and of useful stuff, and so we got halfway through building a shelf, which is really annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's expensive and annoying to. And then you're like, should I cut it? Should I just use a scrap that doesn't really fit? I feel like we have a lot of that.
Maybe this is where the PVC comes back in.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, for big, it's like very floppy in a weirdly.
Yeah,
it's not very rigid. Yeah, it's a thought. Also, let's see, $50 for 7x12. So that would be.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's more surface area.
Per dollar.
Per dollar, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I was just thinking easy to cut.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Interesting. Cool. So this has been a big push this last week. It was kind of like on the list for quite a while, but we made some big strides this last week, which was we ran our first, this isn't entirely true. In the modern era, I should say.
Okay.
We ran our first program in a machine in our shop that was not programmed or set up by me in any way.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Damn.
The caveat being that when my friend John worked with us several years ago, like one day a week, he did a bunch of lathe programming.
Right.
So maybe the way to say this is the first mill program in our shop.
But also that was a very different.
It was a whole different,
And this unlocks a lot more things for you.
This unlocks a lot. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a big deal.
That's huge.
And so I had kind of like sicked quorum on learning it, and it was clearly very overwhelming, and it was hard to come up with like a reasonable project.
Yeah.
And we were about to run a bunch more soft jaws. And Aiden had designed a variant for taking our standard KSC softjaw and modifying it to mount to the KSP vices.
So can it run on either one or?
No, it's dedicated, but it has the same footprint.
Gotcha.
And I was like, we need to make those anyway. That'd be a great project. So Aiden has quite a bit of CAD/CAM experience, and so he basically walked through programming that with Quorum, and it was a great test piece.
Wow.
And then they switched, and Quorum did most of the work, and they ran a customer part, which was a big deal.
Wow.
That was today. So
that's huge.
It was a huge deal.
Wow.
Actually, 2 customer parts.
That is a game changer.
Quorum did one, and Aiden did one. Aiden was proofing his out when I left today.
So you shopping for vacation homes?
Yeah. Just watch the money roll in. No, but it's a massive.
That is huge.
Massive thing. And definitely like the whole pace in the shop has slowed down a little bit, as understandably, due to, 2 people basically being like occupied with training. The
pace of running parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But 100% okay with that. It's like,
man,
is a big lift.
That is a huge unlock, I feel like.
Yeah. So I'm very excited. We have a lot to figure out now about, I have to learn to use Fusion because I don't use it currently. And I'm a little concerned about, like, when you're like good at one sport and then you try another sport and you hurt yourself because you're like fit, but you don't actually know how to do the thing.
Okay.
This used to happen to me a lot when I was like cycling a lot, and then I'd like go play soccer, and I'd have the fitness, but I didn't have like the muscles for running, and then I wouldn't be able to walk for like 3 days.
Right. Yep.
I have a feeling I'm going to do the same thing in Fusion, be like, I know how to do this, and then just like break everything completely. So yeah, one task I gave Aiden was to write an SOP, because he built all the templates out for like how to copy and paste and do the things, so I don't destroy it, everything.
That is smart. I feel like also you're going to experience the very like the same problem of going from a one-person shop to a multi-person shop, of suddenly you can't just rely on you knowing how to use all the files, because it's like maybe you didn't make them, or you knowing
there's been a lot of that already.
What data in the tool library is correct, and what you sort of need to all
that, and also just how we're going to handle handoffs of like who's responsible for what. If we get to a point where like there's actually 3 of us who can be programming, and we need to figure out who's tackling what, part of it. Right now it's basically been like, I program, I hand it off to the shop floor, they set up and run parts. So now we're all going to be either one person is going to, or 2 people will continue to be primarily programmers. But I'd like to have us all kind of looping through all the processes a bit more. So we have to figure out how we're going to actually.
That's cool.
Get visibility into that assignment system.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And part of that was Aiden did a bunch of research and picked up another CAD CAM computer.
Okay.
So now we have another dedicated.
What did you get?
I don't know.
Well, maybe.
It's an Asus gaming laptop.
Okay.
I'm not sure the specific one.
Oh, cool.
Seems to be good from what I understand so far.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. That's huge.
Huge deal.
That's huge.
Yeah.
To contrast that, I got a new screwdriver.
Very nice.
Thank you. I got a driver for assembling the belts. It is, I forget who makes it. I saw Henry Holster's posted one, so I was like, well, it's probably a decent brand.
This is a hand screwdriver or a drill, like a powered drill driver? It's
plugged in.
Okay.
And what I didn't really realize is just how the torque setting is so good.
Oh.
Like it runs it to a torque and then stops.
Yeah.
When I say so good, it is so much better than like a drill. You can sort of set it, but it really depends on the inertia. I don't know. There's a lot of variability there, and like unsurprisingly, but something I hadn't really like consciously thought through is just how good it can be. So yeah, this is a solved problem.
So it's basically a nut runner?
It's a nut runner for screws.
Yeah.
And it was like $50 or something.
Wow.
Used on eBay.
Cool.
Yeah. And one of those industrial things where it's like, it's beat up, but they're designed to run all day, every day for years and years. Right. And we're going to run it like cumulatively of like 5 minutes a day. So I think it will last us for quite some time.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah.
And it's a adjustable torque, not a
adjustable
preset?
Torque, within a range.
Yeah.
The one thing it doesn't do, so I'm 3D printing something that I'm hoping will fix this. We're using stainless fasteners, and so you can't magnet them on.
Oh.
And so what I found after buying it is that some of them have a little vacuum, essentially.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm just gonna, and it's literally a shroud that goes around the screw to hold it in. So I'm just gonna 3D print one, and I think that should work.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What generates the vacuum?
I'll just run it off of Venturi vacuum generator.
Gotcha. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Back in the day, we used to use just like a torque limiting screwdriver for fixture clamps.
Yeah.
But it was not powered. Not nearly as cool.
Not powered as in you were manually twisting it.
It was just a screwdriver, but it had a torque release.
Mechanism.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It was better than not.
Yeah.
But still a lot of work. Cool.
Yes.
Now that we have multiple programmers, yeehaw.
Yeah.
Quickly realized that we were going to need to have some visibility into who programmed a
very good point.
A job when someone has an issue with it or needs to make tweaks. So I just added a programmed by column on our work order slip.
Nice.
So that you can write your name down if you did it and moved it along on the job board.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simple.
That is smart.
Yeah. We had a discussion this morning. I think the initial move is that as Aiden and Coram both learn and get more comfortable, initially I think they're going to probably set up and run their own parts, because I think that feedback loop is really important.
Right.
Of seeing what your programming did and kind of experiencing that. But in the longer term, I'm pretty dedicated to the concept of
anyone can run,
but also that like the handoff process teaches us a lot, and not that we want to be doing that work forever.
So right now you're solving they will learn a lot from actually seeing what they programmed and then seeing the issues.
Yeah.
But then you can become complacent in holding that information in your head.
Yeah.
Or like of a particular part that might not work, and so you should slow down the feed or.
Yeah. And even just like the small stuff of like making these post edits for our headers and like how much information we embed in that, which we would never have done if one person were setting up their own work, probably.
Interesting.
And so it's not that I definitely don't want to like be hand typing in this stuff forever.
Yeah.
But the fact that we have to do it all the time is highly motivating to improve the process.
Yeah.
And so I think maintaining that system of handoffs is going to hopefully over the long term get us to a point where that becomes mostly automated. And then we have a really robust system that stores our information, is well documented, and also is like easy for anybody in the shop to run. And then the second part of it was that I have heard, and I think it makes a lot of sense to me, that one of the best ways to learn programming is just having access to Fusion and seeing like what other people have done and making little edits.
Yeah.
So I think as we switch back to them handing off programs to set up to other people to set up, starting to hand off the little tweaks that need to be made to other individuals will be a good way for people coming into the shop to start to learn how Fusion functions or how CAM functions, and how to adjust things. And I think that will be a much simpler way to sort of get your feet wet versus this, what we did with Coram, which was basically like fire hose in the face, you know? So that's my other motivation. And then kind of lastly is like, if you are carrying a project, if you're a project owner, there's not a lot of flexibility in your timeline in like, that seems pretty clear. So like, maintaining the ability for different people to do different parts of the process, I think we'll be able to keep the processes parallel better.
That makes sense.
Anyways, that's my thinking right now.
Very cool.
I want to stick with that for a while.
Yeah, there's a lot to, I mean, that's a huge change. So I feel like,
yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot
of learning there.
A lot of learning and some growing pains, I'm sure.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, massively.
Okay, so when I set a block, we were getting all these rejects for a long time.
Yeah.
When you set a block down with the automation, the gripper opens. When the gripper opens, it doesn't necessarily just release the part.
Yeah.
If there's like coolant, it can stick a little bit more to one finger than the other finger. Or when you pick up out of a tray, when you grip with a parallel gripper, you're only centering it in that one axis. You're not the other way. So when you set it down in the vise, there's some variability in exactly where it ends up.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of rejects, not a lot, but some rejects for that reason. And so we ended up, it was consistently off one direction. And so now we sort of nudge it back to center before clamping. So I did that with the belt in reprogramming it, doing that nudge. But then I found it was not consistent which way it was off because I cut it really tight on like the part in the material.
Oh.
And so any play just threw it off. And so then I was going to do a double nudge where it nudges it to center from one direction and then nudges it from the other. And I was like, that's sort of a waste. So what I ended up doing was programming it to set it down off center one way and then just nudge it to center.
Oh,
so
genius.
It's one move. So now I think we'll probably propagate that across to the rest of them. Because anyway.
Have you tried just clamping before you let go?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Clamping with the vise before you let go with the gripper?
Have I tried that? I don't think I have.
Oh, we do that.
Oh, interesting.
Sometimes it works.
I like that. I'm trying to think. I feel like I had a reason. I didn't want the gripper to be fighting the vise, but now that I say that, I'm normally gripping it orthogonally. Not like 90 degrees to the axis of the vise. Yeah. So that's a great option.
I like how sneaky your option is.
No, but yours is much better. Why create the problem and then solve it? Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah, so maybe I didn't make an improvement, but
we often, but this might not work for you, but we often have smooth jaws, or smooth gripper fingers, so the part could slide.
Yep.
And we'll not grip all the way at the bottom of the blank, and then we'll overfeed.
Oh, interesting.
So that there's actually a little bit of pressure.
That's funny. I've been avoiding that because I don't want to wear out our gripper fingers.
Which is reasonable.
But now that we're 3D printing them.
But also you make a lot more parts than us.
Yeah.
With gripper stuff, so the wear might be a more real, and a lot of our fingers are aluminum.
Yeah.
In either case, it is there. It may generate other issues, but it reliably puts the part all the way down, and
I like that.
Grips the part,
and then something else that's actually related, and I could see using them in conjunction. I needed to have pretty skinny little tips on the fingers to get the stock tight together. 3D printing is not great for that, and so I just 3D printed in some bores, and then we just press a stainless pin in, which we manufacture a ton of anyway. So just press 2 pins in either side to stiffen it up. You could conceivably expose one face of those pins to get a high wear surface very easily, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
I'll report back.
Cool.
I probably won't because it's working. But one day. I like that. So you overfeed and then you clamp with the vise while holding it.
Yeah. For op 1.
Yeah.
Not for op 2.
Yeah. Op 2 is a bit of a dance.
It is a dance. Yeah.
I highly recommend, if you haven't already, in your standardized tooling, make yourself a rubber hose tool.
Yeah, the pushy tool.
The pushy 9000. Yeah. It's pretty awesome. You'd be surprised how frequently a little compliant finger in your CNC.
That is a great.
Actually, handy.
Interesting.
Oh, actually, I programmed when I was hand loading the pneumatic vise.
Yeah.
I programmed it to come push on it.
Oh.
While it was loading, like in the manual pass through. I just built it in because it was annoying to like press it down and shut the vise at the same time. Yeah.
Interesting. I have a topic up on our like questions board of how can we run more parts with our gripper system, and running op 2 reliably is a big part of that question.
Yeah.
And that might be a decent part of the solution.
Yeah.
Realistically.
Yeah.
Because the load handoff is often the hardest part.
The load handoff?
Yeah, for a gripper to vise for op 2.
Gotcha. The other thing I've been contemplating, which I would still like to do because it would save on time, but for you it would just be is to build in some bores that take some sort of like, I'm sure there's like rubber bumpers. So I could just modify, like add a rubber bumper to the gripper fingers.
Oh, yeah.
And then you just open and overfeed, or not even open, and just like press it into the vise.
Yeah.
Shunk makes some products that give you like XY play.
Yeah.
On your gripper for exactly this problem.
Sure.
They're like $1,600, but the funny part to me is that if you look at how they're built, it's just
some rubber bumpers.
Yeah. It's rubber with some attention to like which axes are free to move.
Yeah. Yeah. One of our biggest issues, I think, has just been that the fingers are relatively smooth, and a lot of our parts are not symmetrical.
Yeah.
And so they're not weighted symmetrically. And so when you pick them up, they'll tip. And then when you try and lower them, they're not in line with the pocket. Yeah.
So something else I just actually added that I didn't put on the list, but would solve that problem too, is I took an angle grinder and I modified the inside of the fingers to add notches where they were grabbing the top hat. and that worked beautifully because I was having a similar issue. And so now we're 3D printing that into our fingers.
Interesting.
And so I'm actually more generally thinking about adding texture in that axis on the gripper fingers. I have it on the flip station where I have grooves to grab the sides of the hat. And I always rough the edges, use the roughing mill on the edges of the top hat that will be grabbed by the flip station. So it is texturized in a parallel. So like it's quite good. And actually on the belt, I had to do something a little different for the flip that I wasn't sure would work, which is I'm feeding it way off center. Anyway, it's like a little weird the way it does the flip on it, but so the part is cantilevered way out of the gripper. Yeah. And it works great. And these are much bigger parts than I've been running. So it's sort of like pushing the
limits of your system.
I don't think it's pushing the limits, but it's definitely like, I think a lot of what I was doing was like so ideal for spindle gripping. Yeah. In that if you drop a part, it's not going to wreck the machine. Like it's not going to wreck your like way covers or anything. They wash out. Yeah. Yeah. So it's been interesting doing bigger stuff.
Yeah, totally.
I have, I did write it down, new flip method. That was that, which I kind of covered. And then lastly, something we don't do on this podcast very much. Yeah. That, I don't know, let us know if this would be interesting, is just sort of updates on improvements we've made. I feel like we're always talking about ones we're making. Sure. And what we're thinking on them. I mentioned putting up a shelf for all the paint. Yeah. So I was reflecting on the fact that the paint department is much more organized because it's so much easier to put the paint back now. That paints just end up going back. It's not a struggle. It's not like a thing we have to clean up intermittently. Like it used to be that the bottles would sort of accumulate where they get mixed because, you know, you take them out and then putting them away was annoying. Yeah, and it's interesting, like, again, reducing friction. Like, it is now the lowest friction option is to do it right, which is so ideal because doesn't rely on discipline or any of the rest. Like, why would you backslide if it's the easiest option?
Yeah, that is definitely key to all of these systems. Yeah. Like, make the right way the easy way. Yeah. Or make the wrong way really, really hard. but I guess better the former.
It's way better. That's like adding fences to keep people from walking across your lawn. Yeah. Instead of like, oh, this is where people want to walk. Let's put a path right there, and then no one will walk off of the path. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that might be a good place to end on that note.
Yeah, definitely.
Make the right way the easiest way. Yeah. It's gonna be my life motto.
Buy some bricks. Make some paths.
Yeah.
Make your life wonderful.
Yeah, I guess.
All right. Thanks, everybody. That was a long one. Thanks for listening, and go do some cool improvements. Tell us about them. Tag us.
Yeah.
The good stuff.
We never got back to a bunch of people wrote us emails. Oh, yeah. It was really fun reading them. I think we mentioned that. Yeah. Most of the people who wrote us were not machinists, but that was sort of what we asked for. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. So yeah, keep writing us. Love hearing from you guys. Ideas, just even what you do, photos of your improvements and shop space are really fun.
It's true. Some of those photos made us feel very insecure.
Yeah, it's like, oh boy, got a lot of work to do.
That's really organized. Oh, wow. Anyhow, you can find me on the internet at likenprecision.com, on Instagram at liken_MFG.
And you can find me at austeremfg.com and austere_manufacturing on Instagram. You can find the podcast at Incremental CI. Also, we have a Patreon. Patronize us, please. No, if you get value from this, please consider joining. There's a lurker tier at $1 a month. If you think that's an amount of value.
One or two?
One.
Wow,
that's really it's really affordable lurking. Yeah, great value.
If you consider what your data costs you on other companies, it's like the cheapest lurking option around.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
cool. We'll talk to you soon.